everybody. So I want to thank those that are joining back in again this Sunday. As I talk about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I think it's a mysterious place. And I think it's mysterious because the only thing that we see out of the kingdom is what we see in the news. But as somebody who's gone and lived there, spent 18 months there, completely changed my point of view about it as a country. Really allowed me to get to know the people, the people that you don't see on the news, the people that, our age, they're the ones that are younger, and they're really fun to hang out with, and they seem to be some very happy people. So I wanted to take this time because the kingdom did only open up in the last 5 years, so I thought it'd be a good topic because they do have some very hot destination places, especially in the wintertime because the wintertime in Saudi, it can get chilly just like it does here in the US, but it also is a place that um, it gets snow in the northwest, but it doesn't get so cold that you cannot enjoy the days while you're there on holiday. So, Raymond Giles, Regal Luxury Travel with Raymond, and I bring to you as a travel advisor zero fee travel at your fingertips. I am able to access hotels, luxury hotels around the world. As I've told many people before, when I started doing this, I didn't know what a Rosewood Hotel or a Belmont was. I didn't understand the kind of luxury that we could live or we could experience when we go on our vacations, and that's the whole thing. When you go on vacation, you want to be able to get away from what's going on in your normal day to day, and you want to be able to experience something to kind of give you a reset. And that's why you want to talk to me because I'm going to be able to put you into those places. As I said, zero fees. I'm paid by the vendors, and when I don't charge you a fee, that is allowing you to spend more money to upgrade your experience on your vacation. I'm your advocate. You're going to a hotel one time, they don't expect you to come back, but they know that if you book through a travel agent and they know before you get there that that's what happened, then they know that they're going to have to treat you right because they know that I might put somebody in that hotel again. So it's in their interest to make sure that you're happy because if you're not, then I'm not going to be happy, and then they're going to get it worse for me. And finally, is I save your time. Okay, uh, I know the amount of time that I put into putting some itineraries together, putting some planning into trips for people, and that's I know where to go to find all the information. I have multiple places that I can go to get the best deals on a vacation and on hotels, but you don't have access to that. So you can spend a lot of time that you could be doing something else trying to figure out what you're going to do for a trip, and you get discouraged, and then as soon as you find something good, that's what you jump on, and it might not be the right thing for you. Whereas as a travel advisor, I'm going to help you work through that. And another thing I think that's kind of important to point out at this point is what I do is not multi-level marketing. I've seen a lot of travel advisors. I'm not even going to call them travel advisors, travel agents, and they're out there. They're trying to recruit people to book trips for underneath them, and it's basically to me it seems like a pyramid scheme. That's not what I'm doing. Okay, uh, I am booking your travel. I'm being paid by the vendor. That's it. I'm not hiring somebody else to do the dirty work. So when you have something come up, you're talking to me. You're not talking to somebody I hired. You're not talking to a call center. You're talking to Raymond Giles. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into this. I'm going to talk about um, this first piece of it looks like a cave, but you'll see that it's been carved out. And this was sort of like an antechamber in a place called Alula in the northern part of Saudi Arabia. And it was built by the Nabateans. You'll see some features that look like what you expect in the treasury or the monastery with the Nabateans in Petra. And it was built by the same people, so that would only make sense. But the acoustics in this thing are phenomenal. You can come in here and you can whisper, and the people outside of the antechamber can hear what's going on. So it's been there for over 2,000 years. And so the technology and being able to build it so it stayed this way, basically building it in sandstone, is just unbelievable. And the fact that it's still there today is unreal. So I got a picture of me and one of my tour guides. So here's my tour guide. Guy picked me up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and at 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, dude, I gotta go home. I gotta go back to the hotel. I said, I can't do anymore. The guy was so happy that you know I wanted to see his part of Saudi Arabia, that I wanted to see his country, that he was showing me everything. Okay, during this time, it was during Ramadan, and I was there on this is a Friday night that I'm here, and so I was able to partake in iftar, which is when they break their fast at sunset. They invited me over. There was 30 guys that he grew up with, and their fathers, and then their kids, and it was a really interesting experience to be a part of, and I will never forget it. The week before, I had been in another iftar with another tour guide, and it was just him and his son. So how the iftars are done in different parts of Saudi Arabia differ similar to what we do in the U.S. and how we celebrate Thanksgiving and the meals that we eat. So uh, it's goes to how friendly the people are. I am as extroverted as I am. Sometimes I feel odd when I'm invited into a place where I don't know anybody. But like I've said before, the Saudi people are so overwhelmingly friendly that they insist that you participate in this experience with them. That it is a very much of a social event, and you're all eating from the same dishes. You're eating with your right hand. You're going into this dish and that dish, and it's really something to behold. And if anybody ever has a chance to do it, even if you're in the U.S. and you have a chance to do iftar, definitely recommend it because, like I said, it is a very unique experience. Uh, Another example of how friendly the Saudi people can be is traffic is insane. It really is. But if your car was to break down or if you were in an accident, you're going to have no less than six people stop on the side of the road to try to help you. I've seen people drive the wrong way down the road because they wanted to help someone that was broke down on the side of the road, especially Westerners, because they want to demonstrate the hospitality that they have in their country. And if they see that someone is stranded, they want to be the first ones there to help them out. So once again, it goes to the friendliness and that they put themselves out to make sure that other people are comfortable. And that goes to the my next bullet on how fascinating and how great the people are, and that you have the Bedouin culture. You have a nomadic culture that still exists within Saudi Arabia, and if people love to go like here, people go mudding in the river bottoms, go out on dunes. Well, you can do the dunes out in Saudi Arabia in a four-wheel drive, but if you get stuck, you're in the middle of nowhere. The Bedouins, because that's where they're raising their camels and their goats, they will come out and they will tow you to where you can get back on the road again. And they will not accept money. They feel that it is their obligation if they see someone in distress to be able to help those people out. And so uh, it's another way of showing how caring they are, how friendly they really are. You might not be able to speak to each other. Being able to say shukran, which is thank you, um, and assalamu alaikum, okay, peace be unto you, and just a couple of simple phrases like that will endear them to you. They will smile and they know that you respect them and they will return the respect, absolutely without a doubt. Okay, um, so I'm gonna show you some of the food that we had there. This is makluba. Um, you can do it a couple of different ways. This is it's rice and chicken. They have one where they will pack a pot full of rice and meat and vegetables, and they will cook it, and then they bring it out and they just take it and it is mashed into this pot and they dump it upside down, and then you take this bread that's right here and you start tearing it apart and you just start going into the rice. The other thing that they'll do, and I never could grasp it, okay, they will grab rice and they will mash it in their hand into a ball, and that's how they'll eat. But they also understand that that is not the Western culture that we use, that we will put it on a plate. We will use fork and spoon. So they will wait until we have served ourselves, or they will serve us until they go in because they know that For us, it's a hygiene thing. Even though they are very hygienic, it's not something like that. But they understand that there's a cultural difference, and that some people might not eat if they see somebody just going in with their hands and eating that way. So they understand our culture, and it's just a matter of mutual respect for each other. But this here was after one of our tour guides. We had been with him for 2 days, and before we flew back to Riyadh, he invited us to his house to have dinner before we went to the airport. Uh, it's just one of the things that you can expect if you are visiting with a Saudi, that you are going to eat a meal in their house. You just might as well accept that that's what's going to happen, and they are just absolutely hospitable in how they treat their guests. Um, and this picture here, so this was the Westerners every Thursday night, because Thursday in Saudi Arabia is like Friday in the U.S. We would go to dinner and we would order family style, in a way that, um, it would you would almost roll out of there. Okay, the food was so good, and six of us would be there, and we'd order like six starters and four mains and a couple of desserts. Like I said, you're rolling out of there, and you would walk out and you'd spend like $30 for a feast on a Thursday night. So, because of the expat culture over there, you do have the chance to, um, socialize with Westerners as well as being with your Saudi colleagues. The so talking, I want to talk a little bit about the Saudi history before I get into some of the places to visit. Um, some of the places that I visited go back 10,000, 12,000 years. They have rock carvings that, if you were actually to look at how deep the carvings go, and I have a photo in here, but it almost goes in a quarter to a half an inch deep. And they were basically carving human figures, figures of camels into these walls or into these stones, and they have endured, like I said, thousands of years. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site that you're able to go visit. You obviously have to have a tour guide, because they do have everything fenced off, because the ministry in Saudi Arabia understands the cultural and historical importance of these things, and they want to make sure that they're protected. Um, there are a couple of places that are off limits. If you are from the U.S., the State Department highly discourages you from going to an area called Abha, because of its proximity to the Yemeni border. Because the Houthis will occasionally fire rockets into Saudi Arabia, even though there's a truce, and also Americans and Westerners are targets along the Yemeni border. So State Department discourages you from going down there, but also you are not allowed, unless you are a Muslim, you are not allowed to go into Mecca, which is one of the two mosques that are protected by the King of Saudi Arabia. You have to be a Muslim to even enter the city limits. All workers have to be Muslim. Everybody going in has to be Muslim. That's where they go to do Hajj, which is where they walk around um, the Aqaba, which is the big black cube in the middle of the mosque in Mecca. So, uh, unless you're a Muslim, don't even plan on going to Mecca. Um, in modern times, there's been a lot of development in the kingdom. Saudi has what they call Vision 2030. What it is it's a very hard and expensive push to modernize Saudi Arabia, everything from their cultural standing on the globe to how they are doing manufacturing and production. Saudi Arabia has a goal of having over half of their any goods that they purchase being produced within the kingdom by 2030, and they also want to move away from having so many expats lead their projects. They want to shift over to where Saudi nationals are able to take on this responsibility. So that is a part of their Vision 2030, and that has led to they've been awarded the 2030 World Expo. Used to be called the World's Fair, similar to what where we first saw electricity on public display in Chicago. The Eiffel Tower was put on display in Paris. It's the same thing, but it's going to be in Riyadh in 2030. As well as there's a ski resort being built in the northwest part of the country, because, like I said, it does get cold and it does snow, but they're putting forth efforts to be able to do man made snow and have a ski resort in that area. and Saudi Arabia has won the 2029 Asian Winter Games. So there's a big push to make sure that that'll be completed so that they can do all the trial runs and everything that they need to do before the actual event. And finally, they pay for everything. They've got oil and they've got gold. Um, and that is what they're using to pay for a lot of these projects. And everybody knows that Saudi Arabia has gold, but I think a lot of people didn't understand that they also have a large amount of gold deposits in the country as well. It's not like what we think of with the gold miners uh, in 49 going into San Francisco. It's not like that. It's actually has to be extracted through a process, and so that's where their gold deposits come from. So um, one thing I wanted to say real quick, I'm thinking back to the food piece here. Saudis love their coffee. Okay, they love their coffee. They love their sweets, and their sweets aren't like what we think of sweets. They're not as um, hurt your teeth sweet. They are sweet, and that's what they're for. But they use a lot of honey in their cooking instead of a lot of processed sugar like what we do. And like I said, they love their coffee. There's Arabic coffee. And I think part of it stems from the fact that they do not, alcohol is illegal in Saudi Arabia. And just like when alcohol became illegal on board ships in the Navy, they replaced it with another vice, and that's coffee. And I think that Saudi Arabia is very much similar in that they're not allowed to have alcohol, so they replace it with coffee. The coffee is very good, and you can pull into a gas station, and there's 4 or 5 different places for you to get coffee, and so you never have to want for it. So jumping into the places that are there. So from Riyadh, there's this place here. It's called the Edge of the World, and it's a large escarpment, and it's out in the middle of the desert, and it's unreal. I mean, you almost look at it and you think that, oh, this could be the Grand Canyon, except for there's no wall on the other side of it. It just goes on for into the abyss, and you're looking at about 900 feet here. So there was you can take tours out there and go walking and everything, and you get some beautiful views. I actually had to wear a hoodie because I went in February, so it is an interesting place to visit. It's about an hour and a half drive from Riyadh. So as far as Riyadh goes, I'm going to move myself out of the way here for a second. All right. So this here is a view of Alaya Road, which is one of the main streets that goes through the business district in Saudi. And I'm taking this from Kingdom Tower. If everybody, I think it's Lord of the Rings that has the fiery eye looking thing. All right, that's from this tower. Okay, and that's just looking out over the streets, lots of traffic, and then this is from the Sky Bridge, where I was actually taking this photo. The colors change, but you are once again you're about 900 feet up in the air, and you are just looking down, just massive traffic, but it's beautiful. It really is, and it's not very expensive to go to the top and be able to do this. So. The other place to visit, so Riyadh is the capital of Saudi Arabia now. But 100 years ago, it was in Jeddah because Jeddah is on the Red Sea, and it was easier for mariners and other government officials to, excuse me, to stop in Jeddah. And so you have these beautiful buildings here with these balconies, and this is in an area called Al Balad, the old town, and it's going through a renovation right now, funded by UNESCO, and it's fascinating. Now we went there on a Friday when everyone was at mosque, so we had the streets. I mean, you can look. There's no foot traffic at all on any of these streets because everybody's at mosque, and so it a great place to visit. Like I said, lots of history. The first U.S. embassy in Saudi Arabia is in Jeddah, and they're just going to continue to to renovate this area so that it's more people will want to go visit there. Um, Going back to Riyadh real quick, I guess I messed up my slides, but oh well. This is the original settlement for Riyadh. It's called Diriyah, and it's a mud brick fortress. Another area that just underwent extensive multi-billion dollar renovations. It is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I was able to visit it. If you visit it on national holidays, we went specifically on Flag Day, then entrance is free, and you're able to kind of see how the city was laid out, the different mosques that are there, and then you have all these rooms, and it's quite extensive to walk through. And if you go on Flag Day, it's a good time to visit because it is cooler because it is February. So it's another like, and the beauty of this is I was able to stay in Riyadh. I'm like, you know what? I need something to do on Saturday. There is Diriyah is actually a larger area. There was a tennis tournament there a couple of years ago between an American and a Russian in the finals. We had a lot of people go to that, and then also there's some good shopping and really good restaurants in the area. Um, Jumping back to Jeddah real quick, this here is a 160 room house. This photo here, I actually had I commissioned someone to turn it into a painting, which hangs in my living room. It is such a beautiful building. It's one of the ones that was completed for the renovation by UNESCO, and where the almost like the Sultan of Jeddah, this was his home, and whenever the king of Saudi Arabia, once all the provinces united, the king, when he would come here, he would stay at this house. This here is, we are up at I can't remember what it's called. I'll remember it later and I'll put it in the chat. But we're basically looking out into the Red Sea from Jeddah. The water is beautiful. It's a beautiful place to just take a stroll. And like I said, we were there on a Friday. There wasn't a lot of people, not a whole lot of traffic. Um, so if we go back to the first picture that I showed you, my tour guide was the one holding the camera. I was in the middle, and then you had an author that was to the left. And uh, in my visit, we went to this place, and they call it Sarah's Cave, because there are still biblical elements in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. And because they're both Abrahamic religions, there are some ties to each other, where you'll see some similarities in the stories. So this here, so this cave was not black roofed. It has turned black because when this was a shelter several thousand years ago, they would burn their fires in here. And this is soot from the fires that were lit inside of these caves. But because you had a natural flow from one side to the other, they didn't have to worry about the smoke being in there, and it would actually heat up quite nice in here. When you look here, this was actually a well. So inside of here was where they would go. They would draw the water from the well at the top. But at some time in the last 2,000 years, somebody bored a hole through here and it drained the well. So now it's nothing but a place to look. Um, Another place that I visited was a place called Heil, and once again, it's spelled Hail, but they pronounce it Heil. And this is where I was talking about some of the 12,000-year-old rock carvings. But first, I want to talk about this here. So the buildings and the homes in this region were mud built. So you weren't able to paint or decorate the walls of your home, and you weren't going to put up wallpaper. So what the women in this area would do is they would take a white sheet, and all of this is hand stitching. It's not quite yarn like what you would see for crocheting, and it's not thread that you would see for cross stitch. It's in between. And all of this is hand stitched, and I managed to pick me up a pillowcase. I went to an art exhibit, and when I saw that there were these artisans selling these pillowcases that had this hand stitching, I was ecstatic. I was able to pick it up for $20. It will never be used for anything than to just look at, because uh, the craftsmanship that goes into making something like this is just unbelievable. But all the old houses in Heil are decorated with these kind of these sheets. You walk in, rugs are all over the place, and then you can see here dates and coffee. Uh, Saudi, I'm gonna tell you, you get a medjool date in the U.S., they suck. Okay, they're trash dates. But you get dates here. Oh my God, there's just so many dates. We had one guy that worked with me that his family owned um, uh, date, not like plantations, but they just had all these palm trees where they would get their dates. And there's so many different varieties. Think of it like we do our apples. Okay, you have Honeycrisp, you got Pink Ladies, the Galas, all that. But then you have the Sakari dates, which are a very sweet date. Then the I think it's Sawa dates. Those are the best dates, and you can only get them in Saudi Arabia, but they are fantastic. Looking at this here, this is a multi-thousand-year-old carving. Okay, so they have an Arabian panther or an Arabian jaguar, one of those two. It's a cat, and this is supposed to be one of those. Person fighting him off. Then on the camel, and they would put these up so that they would remember the next time they were moving through the area if it was one of them or not, and then how many camels they had with them on this journey. And then right here, okay, might be a little difficult to see, but these are the oldest of the rock carvings that are there. You can see that they go much deeper than what these do. This almost looks like they just kind of shaved off the rock. But here they actually dug out and made a deep impression into these, and they believe that these go back 10 to 12,000 years, based on the dating of the of how deep they're cut. Another place, and this was probably one of my favorite places to visit, is Alula. Once again, Saudi Arabia only opened up to tourism in 2019, and this was one of the first places that really became a hot tourist destination. So, this is an oasis in the northern part of the country, and for those that were on the my Facebook Live last week, I talked about some of the biblical destinations with uh, within Saudi. Okay, now this one in particular is where the Daydanites lived because it was on a trade route from Tyre and other destinations in the region. So over here, like I said, this is an oasis. So you have all of these palm trees, and at this point, they're doing an excavation of a old farmhouse. And right now, they are at the Muslim era of the house. They know that underneath that house, there's going to be a little bit of some Christian artifacts that they're going to find, and then below that, they know that they're going to find old Jewish artifacts because that's just what archaeology does. One of the fascinating things about this area is of all the tours that we did, um, I had one male tour guide and the rest were female. Uh, Saudi has made a big push for, especially the Crown Prince has made a big push for uh, freedom for women in the kingdom. He's really wanted to change what has historically been done there. And one of the things that they're doing is they are putting women front and center with the increase in tourism in the kingdom, so that they are able to interact with tourists coming in from around the world. And you ask them, so what made you want to be a tour guide? And they tell you that I wanted to be able to share my country and my culture with other people. So it's really kind of sweet. This here is the old town of Alula. It is all mud and mud brick. Uh, there is two. They had a winter side and a summer side, um, and the reason for that is in the wet season, the city would be effectively destroyed because of rain and the wadis and everything else. And this here has lasted a little bit longer. And this picture is being taken from a Nebatean um, tower that was used to alarm them whenever there were potential marauders coming in. So it's a uh, it is a good place to visit. And then this here they call the library, and so on these walls are all these carvings, and it predates the Arabic language that we know today. And in there, they said that they are able to read it and they can tell what was going on in Alula at the time. And what's really cool about this is so you can see that this one here, they've actually carved the letters into the rocks, but they have some where they're embossed. So what they did is they carved out to where the letters are raised in the rock instead of recessed, such as we see here. And then moving out here, so I mentioned earlier that the Nabateans had a big part to play in this part of Saudi Arabia, and this is an example of this. This is so much of what you would see in Petra, because we see the treasury, and then once you go right, you'll see a bunch of these, such as this, and those were the houses of the Nabateans. Now here, these were not houses; these are actually tombs, because they all lived in Jordan, and here, if they died while they were on some sort of merchant trip or something like that, then they would be buried in this region. One of the people on the tours, we talked about the fact that the Nabateans that they found in these tombs, they sent them back to Jordan. And one of the tourists asked, well, why did you send them back to Jordan? Why didn't they stay here? And they pointed out that the Nabateans are not Arabs. The Nabateans are really Jordanian. So they wanted to send them back home, because that's where their people were. So there was no sense in keeping them in Saudi Arabia. But this is they call Hegra at night, and so they set up all these lights. You'll see guys here; they're dressed up in Nabatean guard clothing, and they're standing outside of this tomb. They have a cellist playing. They've got these small bites and some drinks and things like that. So it's really the, Saudi Arabia is really kind of working on how they're going to get tourists into this area, and this is one of them right here. It's really cool. Um, Real quick, one last thing for here. All right, so here's one of the old tombs, and if you were to look at this, this is where they start to see Egyptian culture creep into the Nabateans, because you have orchids. You see Medusa's head on some of them. And so that obviously came from um, the Egyptians who were conquered by the Greeks. So it all kind of made its way over. And then these steps represent the steps up into heaven. Uh, and then this was the tomb of probably the most famous tomb there, because you have this one giant rock that's here, and they started to cut this out. And then they buried the son of the king inside of here. But here's what's fascinating. This is basically like we would think of a headstone at a cemetery for us. So it tells you who's buried there, when they were buried, who their father is, and who their family, so that there's more than one slot in here to put a body. So you could put other members of the family inside of this tomb based on who was buried here. Okay. The last place I visited in Saudi Arabia was um, up in the northwest part, Tabuk and Sharma area. And so here, there's this giant rock, and you're going through the desert, and all of a sudden you see it's almost like it starts growing sandstone mountains. And here's one place they call it the temple, and it's you have all these carvings that basically they predate Christianity and Islam, and some of them have been destroyed, but these have been able to be protected. But it shows you that at this is a place where they would have religious services for this community. Um, this here is they call it the ship, and as you go through, because it is on the road to Mecca, when Muslims were doing their pilgrimage from Syria and Jordan, they would stop by and you see a ship, you see something shaped like this, you think of ships and voyages and pilgrims, and so they would stop and they would make carvings on these on this ship. So it was one of the neat places that our tour guide had us stop. And then finally, this here is the Sinai Peninsula. This is the waters of the Gulf of Aqaba. It is quite choppy, but It is the darkest blue water I've ever seen in my life. It is absolutely beautiful. Um, so I think that, you know, I've shown some good destinations within Saudi Arabia. I think it is definitely a place that people should explore visiting. Saudi understands luxury. If you're looking for luxury accommodations, they definitely have those available. There's a Fairmont, you've got Rosewood, or I think there's a Rosewood, but I know that there's a beautiful Ritz Carlton in Riyadh. But there are luxury accommodations throughout, and they understand how to treat their guests to make them feel welcome. So if you're asking how you get there, I talked about it last week. There are multiple airlines that fly from Europe into Saudi Arabia, as well as the ability to fly Saudia uh, to Riyadh, and then you can connect to these other destinations. Uh, then you've got Emirates, Qatar, um, Royal Jordanian. They actually fly out of Chicago, and I believe New York. And then also Egypt Air is another airline that can get you over to Saudi Arabia. So I know that I have kind of put a lot out there. Um, I didn't know anything about Saudi Arabia except I could go there and make money when I went. And after going there, it is really a good time and a life lesson in being able to sit with the Saudis and be able to experience life with them. It is something that I encourage. There's more to see in the area than just Saudi Arabia, but I do want people to know that it's not a place that you need to be scared off of because of what our media tells us. Um, it's If you go, I don't think there will be any regrets if you were to go visit this country. Uh, so that's going to wrap it up for the mystery and wonders of Saudi Arabia. And what I'm thinking about doing for next week is I'm going to do a high level view of Scotland. I know that's another place that a lot of people would like to go. Fascinated after the movie Braveheart came out in the '90s, but being able to see the castles and be able to see how they fought for their independence from England, uh, but then to end up back in the United Kingdom anyway. So it's hopefully everybody can tune in for that. It'll probably be a pretty good one. I'm going to talk about the Highland Games, uh, the Tattoo Festival, and it's not tattoo like what we think, where you get ink put in. Tattoo is a festival for bagpipes and drums. Uh, and then we'll talk about Sterling, and then once like whiskey tours and those sorts of things. So hope everybody can call in next week. I will send the invite out to everybody here shortly. But until then, everyone have a good week, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday.